Hope and Patience with Amelia Rope, a podcast about business, well-being and chocolate.
A huge hello to my lovely listeners. Now, are you one of the lockdown newbies to sourdough baking? Have you joined the nation's sourdough obsession? Our guest today has an Instagram page which will make your taste buds go loop the loop. She founded her business aged 15, sold out of her bread within 25 minutes on opening her pop-up, and now with her dad has her very own shop in Watlington, Oxfordshire. Her sourdough combos include cornflakes with cornflake milk and Marmite. Oh, and to add to that, her portrait is in the National Portrait Gallery as part of the BP Award Portraits, and she and her dad have a book in the pipeline too. Hello and welcome to the sought-after sourdough queen, Kitty Tait, founder The Orange Bakery.
Hello. That feels an honour coming from the queen of chocolate.
Very quickly, Kitty, are you just 16?
No, I turned 16 on 30th of April.
Oh, happy birthday. So, Kitty, would you share your backstory of how you got into the world of baking and about leaving your school life behind too?
Yeah, so I was an awful baker. I was the type of person who kind of read what went into a cake or like a batch of cookies and then kind of say, oh, it's okay, it's got some eggs, got some flour, and then throw it all in. Not any like scales, measurements were involved. And normally what I'd pull out of our elderly argo was something that was just pure rubber or a frisbee or way too tough or way too raw. So whenever I used to say that I was baking, my parents would just have this silent sigh. I went to my local secondary school, which was a 1-minute walk from our house, which is really lovely. And I'm the youngest of 3, and I loved just being involved in everything and being a part of everything. But I also had quite a strong work ethic, so I just wanted to be the best and do everything. If that was sports or drama or English, history, whatever it was. So my brother was doing his GCSEs and my sister was doing her A-levels. And I was 14, so in year 9. And I just kept questioning myself or asking, just what is the point of doing this? Is it to do more exams in the future? Why am I doing it all? And I started to just spiral into this faster and faster and faster darkwood circle almost. But I was a very good actress. And I was able to carry on this pretense of who I was, which was this very like smiley, happy. I was kind of like the type of girl who would laugh so hard she'd pee herself a little. And then one day I didn't want to get out of bed because I was just exhausted from pretending to everyone all the time. And my parents just thought, oh, I'd had like quite a long week and I'd worked very hard, and then I didn't wake up the next day and I stayed in bed, and again it was a weekend, so they're like, oh, she's just exhausted. But then Monday came around and it wasn't that I didn't want to get out of bed, it's literally that I couldn't. I was numb everywhere. And I think that's when my parents realised this wasn't something that I was just tired, this was something more. But my parents work extremely hard. My dad's a teacher and my mum works for a cancer charity. So it wasn't like they could just stop everything and help me. And that summer was a very long and quite scary summer. But during the summer, my dad always used to make a loaf of bread, and they were not beautiful. I didn't grow up on like fresh homemade bread. I grew up on the proper like white slice 99p. And when my dad did bake bread, we'd always go for like the 99p instead of like this quite dodgy loaf. And he started making this bread, and this is a no-knead method. So you add a tiny bit of yeast, flour, water, salt, and you stir it in a bowl, and you leave it for about 12 hours, and the next morning you scoop it into a tin and bake it. And it's still quite a like breeze block of a loaf, and always quite doughy in the middle. But to me, this just seemed like magic in such a simple process, and just 4 ingredients. He stirred them together. I remember the first evening I watched him make it, I actually took the piss out of him because I was like, oh, what have you made? This like clumpy mix. Then the next morning, when he showed me the bowl, it was just this bubbly, alive mixture, and I was like, oh damn. And I asked slash kind of forced him to teach me how to make this loaf. And it's such a simple method, and I instantly just fell in love with it. You know that thing when you do something once and you know that that's it, the way it makes you feel, the way it empowers you, the way it captures your imagination, you know that's the thing that you want to do. So I started making more and more loaves of bread. My family couldn't sustain themselves on this like pure bread diet, so we started giving out to neighbours. And we're in quite a small rural town, so good bread you'd have to drive an hour to get to if you wanted to go to Oxford or wherever. I started giving it to neighbours, and then they told their neighbours, who told their neighbours. But we have a very elderly Aga, so I had to tiptoe around in the morning to my neighbour's house and bake all the bread, and then I would put it on the back of my blue bike, which had no brakes whatsoever, and I would cycle the bread around my village, dropping it off to each people's house. And that I did for about a couple of weeks, and for me it was just that routine of I had to get out of bed because I had to bake the bread, and I was doing something that really mattered and that really benefited other people, and I was giving something to people, and all of that came together as this amazing, almost like this therapy. I was pretty bad at any other therapy. My parents tried to get me into like mindfulness or knitting or pottery or whatever, and I was so bad at it because I have such a short attention span at the same time.
So did you know, Kitty, at that stage that you were going to set up the Orange Bakery, or was it still just something that you were doing to distract yourself from the sort of inner workings of your mind and to give you a sort of boost and a much rosier outlook in life?
I think yes and no. I think maybe deep down I probably always knew that this would lead me somewhere, but in the moment I could only think literally for the next hour, or in that very day I couldn't think like 6 hours time I'm going to do this. I had to think in the moment every day. But then as time went by, I definitely had that kind of feeling, that gut feeling, when you know that this is something that's going to last and something that has come to you in a time of your life, not just to distract you, but almost like a weird sense of a cooling.
So from the when you were biking or cycling around with your bread in the basket, how did you move that into the pop-up stage and your, what was it, yarn bombing that I discovered about, your orange pom-poms, and from that into opening your shop? What was the sort of time frame and how did you go about that, Kitty?
So for me, it felt like everything happened quite slowly, but actually looking at the time frame, it all escalated very fast. I think within 6 months of baking my first loaf, we opened the shop.
Wow.
Which sounds crazy.
Kitty is quite a girl. I mean, I think you're a girl, or are you a woman, or I don't know, young lady?
Bit of everything. I've always been quite like that, like when I pick something to do, and maybe it's because I'm young and I had that naivety, I go for it. Nothing stops me, even if it is like the barrier that everyone else sees. I just see it as something to do or to be done. And my dad was amazing because he was teaching at Oxford Uni. He specialises in dyslexia, and he then realised actually he'd always wanted to open a shop and to do something like that, and he'd always loved bread. So together it was like his dream combo. But at the very beginning, it was very much he'd bake the bread with me, and then he'd go off to work, and then I'd go and deliver it. Then he'd come back and he'd make the bread with me for the next day. And we got to a point when we were producing so well, it felt like a lot. I think it was like 10 loaves a day. That we realised that we really wanted to do something that was bigger, something which almost was a test to us how much we could bake. So we decided to do a pop-up, but I thought no one would come. So we decided to yarn bomb our whole town. And yarn bombing is when you scatter spools of yarn all over your town. So for the first week or two, we tried to knit. I don't know why, we thought we'd pick it up really easily and knit like meters and meters, but we were so bad. I could start it, and my dad could just about do like 3 lines, and then it'd all like form a clump of ball. But what I was quite good at is making pom-poms. So we got all this wool, and we started making about 20 pom-poms a day. But by that rate, we were only producing 140 a week. We needed to produce a lot more. So we decided to ask all our people who were part of the bread subscription and all our friends to make these pom-poms. And I think within like 2 weeks, we had 500. And 3 days before the pop-up, we went around in like the dead of night. I don't know why we did that at night. It felt a bit cooler. And we tied these pom-poms up to every like street post, every gate, everything. And the next morning, everyone woke up to these orange pom-poms all around Watlington, and they were everywhere. They were outside the schools, outside the shops, in some of the shops. And some people started taking them down and taking them home and hanging them up in their windows. And the day of the pop-up, we thought no one would come. We thought, oh yeah, but like, how do people know it was us with the pom-poms? We didn't think it through that well. And we planned like who we'd give our spare bread to. Is it the care homes, a couple shelters? And the day of the pop-up, we loaded the shop up. It was about 15 minutes till we opened, and no one was there. So we were like, oh, it's fine. We'll be open for like a couple hours, and then, you know, maybe give some away. And then about 10 minutes before the pop-up, a couple people started queuing, and then 5 minutes before the pop-up, and there was this enormous queue of about 60 people. And we actually opened the doors 5 minutes early because we were so excited. And I had my brother and my sister helping me, and my mum was there, my dad, and we sold out within 25 minutes, I think it was. And we just about managed to feed the last cinnamon buns, the last person in the queue. But that was definitely the moment when we realised this was something different. This wasn't just a hobby, this was something.
Major turning point.
Yeah. But then we went up to like a 6-day week, which is another extra day of just prepping. So we were working like 7 days a week flat out for about a month, and we just got exhausted. Yeah.
Are you still working sort of 7-day weeks, or have you managed to rebalance it?
So recently we had a couple of days off. We're not very good at relaxing, me and Dad. We find it so unrelaxing and knackering if someone tells us to like have a sleep or have a day when you don't do anything. That's like our hardest days. We are back to our 5-day a week, which gives me a day off and then another day to experiment, which I love doing.
Anybody who wants to know about Kitty's experimenting, do follow her on Instagram, because you will see the most incredible concoctions. So Kitty, do you ever have those sort of days where you feel unmotivated, and or do you find that because it's so new and because it helps you feel alive, that you don't really have unmotivated days?
So I definitely have unmotivated days. Maybe at the beginning when I was like, oh, it's so new, but when you wake up at like 4:30 in the morning, sometimes you're a bit like, oh. But I think for me, it's never just been about the bakery. I've always had like 8 different ideas in my head, and even though 7 of them would always fail, that's the way I work. I never just have one thing that I focus on. And actually that keeps me motivated, just having all these different pockets of things that make me happy, or things that I want to do, or things that I really want to work on. Just when one thing makes me, the other thing just picks me up again.
What do you think about when you're kneading the dough? I mean, do you go daydreaming, or do you think about the business, or do you listen to music? What
a bit of everything. So I do a lot of daydreaming, not gonna lie. I think a lot about the business. I love listening to podcasts and music when we're baking. We do a lot of, sometimes we do really good podcasts, and then every now and again Gardener's Question Time sneaks in there, and we always laugh at how bitchy they are to each other. And then I think it's really lovely because I am always working with my dad. We are able to constantly bounce ideas off each other. So if we're kneading or like cutting up the Alberts or the white sourdough for the next day, we'll talk about like the business or what we want to invent tomorrow or whatever we might be thinking about and whatever's in our minds. That's really lovely, actually. It's almost like a time to have a discussion or a business discussion.
Who's the boss out of you two?
Oh, dangerous question. I'm probably more bossy. I think my dad's like the quiet, secret boss. But I'm definitely more maybe I probably tell him off more, tell him what to do more. But he's probably cleverer.
Who makes the decisions? Do you do them together? And
So we're quite yin and yang. We think very differently, and I think that's why we work. I'm very, I wouldn't say impulsive, but I think very fast, and I can spiral an idea very, very fast and think things through and research things very quickly. But I'm almost like the architect, but my dad's always a builder, so I'll have the idea and exactly how I want to do it and what I want to do. But my dad's amazing at just putting the building blocks in place so that I don't just fall through completely. He thinks he's more of a logical thinker, but he's just as impulsive as me, I think. He just hides it a bit more.
Do you ever fall out with your dad? You know, it's a very intense relationship that you've got.
Yeah.
Are there days where you just think, Dad, you're really annoying me?
Sometimes we're quite blunt with each other, but we both struggle because we're people pleasers. So if I'm in a grumpy mood, he'll be like exhausting himself just trying to make me happy, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
When he's like quite grumpy and doesn't talk much, I straight away think, oh god, I need to make you happy. So we've come to terms with that quite a lot, and yeah, we never actually properly argue, or we're quite stubborn sometimes, so if we have an idea we all both just like voice that till the end. But it's really lovely because I never really knew my dad almost. He was a stay-at-home dad when we were growing up, but when I turned like 10, he went back to work, and I never really knew him properly or spent a lot of time with him actually. And that's something that's really lovely to do with the bakery because we spend so much time with each other. We are almost like best friends. That sounds so sad.
No, I think it sounds lovely. But your siblings get a little bit of, I don't like the word envy, but I'm going to use it. Just thinking, hey, Kitty has all of Dad's time and we have less of Dad's time. Or...
Yeah, so my siblings, I think if it was my younger sibling, I would definitely be like angry and annoyed. But my siblings are older than me and they are so lovely and accepting. And my dad's very good at balancing his time, but my sister's at uni. So when we started the bakery, she went to university, which kind of meant she doesn't like when she's at home. My dad really focuses on spending a lot of time with her. But like day to day, actually, she just doesn't notice. And then my brother was very like involved in his A levels, but even things like that. My dad's very good at like balancing his times. Even now, like in quarantine, I know that sometimes I just need to pick up a bit more of the bakery works, and he can spend a bit more time with them. So it's always a balance, but it works quite well.
Sounds like you've got it sorted. Just a couple of quick questions, Kitty, and then we are going to dive into our chocolate break. So would you say you are an introvert or an extrovert?
Oh, it's so hard one. I flick between the two quite a lot. I'd probably say I am quite an extrovert. My dad's definitely more of an introvert, but I'm more confident, and if I know that I want something, I will go after it, but I'd be very open about what I want and how I'm going to get it.
I don't know if you have this, but do you ever have that sort of critical inner voice that says you shouldn't be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that? And if you do, how do you try and keep that sort of negative chatter parked up?
I have this voice constantly in my head that just tells me I should be doing that, or I should be doing that, or when I haven't done that, or when I should be doing that. And that's why I have to balance quite a lot. If it's this voice in my head at the end of the day sometimes when it goes, oh, did I do that? No, I didn't. Oh, did I do that? No, I didn't. Or should I be doing this, or should I be doing that? And I'm able to balance it sometimes with just literally writing a list in my head of the things that I have done and being proud of those things. But it is something that I definitely fight with quite a lot still. Just that need or that voice that tells me that I should be doing more than maybe that's even physically possible. Maybe it's because I'm ginger and I am quite stubborn. I hated to be dependent on people. I found that really difficult because of the way I am and because I felt that I couldn't be understood. I hated depending, and actually what I've realised is you can't do anything really by yourself, and if you're clever you will depend on the right people. And I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by the right people who support me and love me, but also tell me when an idea is not good, or tell me when I'm doing something too reckless or too fast or something irrational. And yeah, and actually that's something that I've definitely learned recently, just to invest in people, even if they don't get you or don't get your ideas. Invest in what they can do for you and what you can do for them.
I think we all have it, don't we? I read recently this idea where if you've got all this inner chat going on, if you're learning a language, you try and count up to 10 in that language. And actually, I'm not learning a language, but I go back to my days with French, and it really cuts that inner chat off. It's extremely powerful. It's just my new discovery. Okay, so we are going to head in. You can probably hear the rustle of the paper. I hope Kitty's got her bar. It actually is a bar that I have never eaten in the whole of my life. And
wait, one second. I left mine in the bathroom.
Oh, quick! Off you go. Off she goes. I'm going to unwrap mine while Kitty goes to find hers in the bathroom. Why she was in the bathroom was because she was set up to record in the bathroom, but it kept cutting off. It's not some odd thing that she does. And actually, while she's away, I'll tell you that another Instagram push, but Kitty's made these incredible brioche with, here she comes. Kitty, I was just about to chat about your incredible brioche that I've seen on your Instagram page. We'll talk Snickers and then just a quick mention on that because we're going off piece, but I like that. So the Snickers, what is your connection? Because I have seen on your page that your dad settles down with his hat over his eyes for a 20-minute kip and a Snickers. What's your love of this bar that I'm going to try for the first time?
It's definitely something that me and my dad are slightly hooked on. When we were kids, we always used to have it cold. So my dad would put it in the freezer and then he would cut it up into small squares, and we'd go for, normally it'd be quite a hot day or sometimes cold days. And Watlington is shadowed almost by this enormous hill with a white mark on. And it's kind of what we're known for. And he always used to go, every Saturday we go for a walk and we'd go up the hill. And then he'd give us a slice of the Snickers. And something about one small slice of cold chocolate tastes so much better than anything else.
It does. It's funny that the fridge aspect or the freezer aspect of what it does. Yeah. But it is delicious. And Kitty, on your page, you've got the brioche. You've got 1 minute to chat about that because I've got a whole list of questions, and Chris, the producer, is going to be whipping us in shape if we get too distracted.
So is that my cereal milk brioche?
No, it's your homemade peanut. This is made me think, Snicker is a Snicker in a brioche. That one.
I also do Snicker cookies.
Okay.
Which are amazing. I have a caramel in the centre, so when you rip it open, you just get this like caramel gooiness. But yeah, so I invented recently, which were these brioche and then filled with homemade peanut butter and then coated with a dark chocolate ganache.
Very dangerous. You can eat the Snickers. I've had my first slice. Actually, not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad.
I can't believe you've never had one before. I have to get over that.
I think it's the thought of peanuts and chocolate. I'm not a peanut butter fan, actually, at all. I've never eaten it, and I don't want to eat it.
I think I eat a jar a day. It's not good.
Well, I mean, we all have our weak spots, but yeah, peanut butter doesn't get me. Okay, Kitty, success. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the word success? What does it mean to you?
So in a strange way, sometimes they kind of merge into one. Success comes with failure. They're almost like horrible best friends. Because so much of the time I'm actually quite scared of success because sometimes it just fuels that inner voice of if I succeed once, why can't I succeed again and again and again? But at the same time, I feel more comfortable with failure because then there's only one way to go, which maybe isn't the best ethos, but it means that I can set myself goals that are virtually impossible because I'd always rather fail than succeed.
How interesting.
I think it's quite, I don't know, I think that's just the way I work. I love.
So you feel more, so is that, do you think that's going into the high achiever thing? Whereas if you start from the bottom bit of it, as you say, you can only go up, and therefore you're going to keep getting successes. Whereas if you're up on the top level, which to me you are, I mean, your success is, you know, the respect, the acclaim, the product, everything. You potentially, one puts oneself on a pedestal where you could be knocked. There could be a knock. But then you could see potentially that as a positive thing, because it could make you think, actually, you know what, I'm going to just try a little bit better, or I'm going to adapt it, or I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
I think for me, the bakery is definitely just the first step almost. I have very many plans and dreams where I want to go. And I think it is that high achieving kind of gene when you just, success isn't something that you want. It's not something that you want again and again and again. What you want is to failure because you know that the next success will taste even better. Almost like a cold chocolate Snickers. Even though you only get a sliver, it tastes so much better than a whole bar.
Fascinating.
But with the baking, with the bread and sourdough, which I'm sure many of the listeners who bake sourdough will know, failure is constant and it's unpredictable because you're dealing with a live creature. A sourdough starter is alive. It breathes, it bubbles, it eats. And if the temperature gets a bit over this, or if it gets a bit below this many degrees, the sourdough dies, or it goes into a hibernation mode, and then your loaves are flat and frisbee and tough and have big holes in. And that's almost part and parcel of running the bakery and working with something that is so unpredictable. But it's also what I love, because when I then pull out a really good loaf of bread, I really appreciate it, and I'm really proud because I know that I've had to not even fight against, but really understand the sourdough starter and really understand this living creature. It's almost like a reward.
But I mean, chocolate's different, but chocolate is a temperamental beast as well. Kitty, you have your early starts and you clearly work very hard, but what I'd love you to share with the listeners is a little bit about how you look after yourself. So what's your daily ritual when you wake up in the morning?
I wake up, I normally don't have any time. I'm normally like in a half sleep haze at about 4:35, and I bake. And even that ritual is just baking, even though it's my job for me mentally, it means that I can start my day doing something. And something that I do definitely fight with a bit now is looking after myself. I can burn out quite quickly. Actually, recently I found wild swimming, which is really lovely. So after the bakery day is done at like 4 o'clock, we go down to the river and we just swim. And even though it's freezing and you freeze your tits off sometimes, it is amazing, that feeling afterwards. It literally just puts your body into a state of almost like this numbness, but this bliss at the same time. And I really love doing that. Another thing is I have a little corgi. She's not little anymore. I fed her way too much and she's quite chubby now. A little corgi puppy who is adorable, but she's definitely good at the end of the day just to take for a walk or give a cuddle, and really makes you feel like, I don't know, you're looking after her.
Yeah, I was going to say, when does your brain actually stop? I mean, how does stress affect you, and where does stress affect you? Is it a physical thing? Is it a mental thing? Is it both?
I think it's a bit of everything. So sometimes my brain just doesn't stop. So you have those nights when you go to bed but you don't sleep because you're thinking constantly again and again. And I'm not great at that. Sometimes I will just think for about 8 hours when I'm lying in bed and think about all the things I should be doing or want to do, or the bakery should be doing, or sometimes it's completely random things that I'm thinking about. And what, yeah, and that's definitely sometimes frustrating, but also it means that I can wake up in the morning, or even just get up in the morning and go, right, I've got a business plan, I've got an idea. My dad always goes, what when did you sleep?
What do you do if you can't sleep? You just allow your mind to keep thinking
Yeah.
and processing. You don't do anything to stop yourself and then
No, I
go
think
to
that's
sleep.
what I've
No.
had to learn. Sometimes I go down and I have like some hot milk. And that's definitely something I've had to learn to do. And I just make sure I have a sleep in the day, because if my brain starts to work and my brain starts to have this, go on this like idea and thought process spiral, I just have to let it, because no matter how hard I stress myself out trying to sleep, it just doesn't work. And actually sometimes something really interesting and magical can come from just thinking and riding this flow of thoughts in the night.
Do you see your bread baking as a sort of form of meditation and helping you live in the moment?
Yeah, definitely, actually. Whenever we have like a week's break, or that's probably when I find it the most stressful and the toughest, because even though the bakery can be stressful, it's so calming, and just that feeling of touching something the whole time, of feeling the dough underneath your fingertips, and it's alive, and it's alive because you've created it and you've fed it and you've nurtured it. And then feeling that you can, in the morning when we're baking this bread, every single loaf that comes from the oven, someone is going to enjoy, and someone is going to cherish, and someone's going to eat every day for breakfast. And that feeling every morning is very therapeutic and very meditating, and takes away any stress that I feel is on my chest.
Do you have any hobbies, Kitty, apart from baking?
At the moment, my brother and sister are at home, so I'm playing a lot of things like bananagrams, which I always fail at because I'm quite dyslexic. But apart from that, baking takes up a lot of my time. And when I'm not baking, I just want to experiment, or I love to draw and I love to doodle. Normally, I doodle like pastries and donuts, and always in the same continuum.
How does it feel running a business at such a young age, Kitty? And, do you miss your school friends and that whole school life?
I've been very lucky to be surrounded by really supportive people who have helped me along the way and helped me along the journey. My school friends were really lovely when I got ill, and they used to send little parcels through my door and little envelopes. I think they see, I don't know, leaving school and setting up a bakery to be the dream. But I think if they had to get up at like 4:30 one morning, I think they would run to the school. And with the bakery and with the business, I have a lot of ideas and I have a lot of ambition for it. I don't see myself running a bakery in my town for like the next 10 or 20 years. I have a lot of ideas for franchising and have a lot of ideas for building up this brand of the Orange Bakery and seeing where I can take it. And maybe it's because I'm a bit overly ambitious, or I prefer failing than succeeding. So some of my ideas are a bit out there, or are very ambitious, but it's something I'm really excited to looking forward to doing.
Can you share any of your ideas?
Yeah, of course. So obviously we had the book in the works, but what I'm also really interested looking into is creating an Orange Bakery franchise, which it wouldn't be a bread, it wouldn't be like a Gales or a Ole & Steen, where the bread is all made in two big factories and then shipped out to the shops, which is still very good bread. What I'm really interested in doing is creating the atmosphere. What's so good about the bakery isn't just the bread. I mean, the bread's nice, but it isn't the bread. It's the atmosphere that we create. It's people feel a part of something when they're queuing. They feel like they're a part of something that's special and warm, and they feel almost cool. They feel cool to queue. We get a lot of customers who just feel good when they queue, and that's what I'd be really interested in looking into recreating everywhere. Is somewhere where people can come together and queue for something that they enjoy, but queue because they want to, and queue because they feel they can be a part of the community and a part of something different and interesting.
Do you feel much older for your years? I mean, talking to you, I could be talking to someone pretty much my age and I'm about to be 50. Do you feel a sort of old soul as such?
I never used to. I think it's funny when you come out of the education system, you look back and things like I would never be friends with someone who was like the year below me or the year above me, or you'd have to be really cool to be friends with people the year above. And even gender, you could only really be friends with like people who are your gender. And if you were friends with a boy, oh, it's a bit risky. So for me, coming out of that, I definitely do almost feel like I'm 15 going on 50.
Do you have friends your age group?
Yeah, I do.
You hang out with still?
I have a couple, yeah. But I think it's odd because for me, it's definitely, I find it hard because I'm in a complete different world almost, or just the way a conversation goes is different when you're with 15-year-old girls to when you're with someone who is 25 or 30 or 45. And that's something that I always kind of juggle. And I had a lot of expectation on myself to be more like a teenager. And what I'm kind of navigating through now is just being a bit different. It's not being, I have a word for it kind of. It's not being like unique or special. It's not better. It's not worse. It's kind of just being a bit other. And being a bit other is just when you think a bit different, and maybe you're a bit older, or maybe you're a bit younger. And it's just thinking a bit different.
Do you think you'll return back into the education system at some stage?
So I was looking into going to sixth form for a while, and there was a really lovely school who offered me a scholarship. But actually, for me, I always have to take something up to the line to decide if I want to do it or not. And I'm at a different part of my life now, and I've established a different life for myself almost, where going back into the education system doesn't make sense to me. And I think it's amazing, and my brother and sister have loved it. And I think it's something that benefits 99% of people. But for the 1%, actually, it's not the right path. And I think I've just realised that it's not the right path for me.
I wonder what do you see yourself doing by the age of 20? I mean, it's going to be fascinating to watch you grow.
It's a dangerous question. I think there are loads of different routes I want to go into. I have different plans, like I have different ideas in my head. There are 7 different things I want to represent and people I want to help. But at the same time, I think I just want to be different.
Kitty, what advice would you give young people with setting up a business and potentially doing something similar to you?
I think there's so many different things. I would probably say it's okay to be naive, and it's good actually. If I was 22 and I wanted to start a bakery, I'd see more obstacles, even if that was supporting myself or whatever it might be. And actually, if you're young, use that naivety, use that freedom that you've got, and go for it.
Brilliant advice for everybody, I think, really. Do you have a favourite song that you listen to when you're in the bakery, or a song that just makes you feel really upbeat?
So we have a big Orange Bakery playlist, which we add like 10 songs to every day. But my favourite song, it's a bit of an odd one. I became my favourite song when I was like, I think I was 7, 8, called El Mundo. It was when we've never really gone on holidays that weren't Scotland or France, but once we went to this little apartment in Rome, and I remember it was right next to a train track, so every like hour the whole apartment just started shuddering. But we went to this town square one day, and there was this old man singing this amazing Italian song. And that's what probably I love to listen to about 8 times a day. And it's just...
So it's called El Mundo.
El Mundo.
Okay, there you go, listeners. That's one to put on your playlist. So, Kitty, the podcast is called Hope and Patience, and I would love to know if you can remember a time when you've had to have huge amounts of hope, and then also another time where you've needed to have a lot of patience.
These are something that I probably have to have every single day, and that's the bread baking, when we're making the dough and we don't know how good it is at the beginning. We don't know how alive the starter is, and you do have to have a lot of hope, and then you have to have a lot of patience, because even if you've been making, because sourdough takes about 36 hours to make, so you have to have a lot of hope that it's going to go well, and then a lot of patience to when you do actually bake it, and waiting for it to ferment and waiting for it to bubble up. But also with my mind and with the bakery and with almost the business and the journey, the way I work is quite fast speed, and I like to get things done quickly. And if I have a dream, I will wake up the next morning and think, right, I want to do it today, or I want to do it tomorrow, or I'm going to do this. And I have to have a lot of hope in myself, but also have a lot of patience with that, because some things just take time, and people take time, and loads of different processes just take time. My granny's actually called Patience, so that was always a joke.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
How funny, because my granny was Patience. So your granny's Patience, and how old is your granny?
I think she's, oh no, I hope she doesn't listen to us. I think she is 84.
Wow. Hello, Patience, if you're listening to this. Because my granny died a long time ago, but I just think the name is Patience is such an incredible name. It's been such a treat to chat with you, and you've got some exciting things in the pipeline. You've got the book in the pipeline. I'd love you just to tell the listeners where they can find you, where they can find your incredible bakery too, which now we're allowed to go out of London. I'm definitely going to drive down and queue up.
So you can find us in Watlington. We are on the High Street, number 10, and you will notice there's normally a queue on a Saturday, but and the smell is quite an obvious tell. We have an Instagram called The Real Orange Bakery, which I think I started a year ago, which is really lovely, and you can almost see the whole journey through pictures. And what we're currently working on now is our recipe book and our cookbook, but it's also going to be, half of it is story and our journey, and then the other half are my recipes. And there'll be recipes that will be easy, and there'll be recipes that will be simple, but then there'll also recipes which are a bit weirder, like cornflake brioche or Marmite bread. And hopefully that will be coming out in the next couple of years.
So that's really exciting. And also, listeners, what I'm hoping is that she allows us to have a recipe that we can potentially put up on the website and in our newsletter. So I need to ask Kitty about that. But thank you, Kitty, once again so much for sparing your time. It's been a treat. I've wanted to have you as a guest on the podcast since before the podcast was created. You were on my top of my list, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to ask her. And so I'm really, really chuffed that you said yes. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I hope I won you round with Snickers.
You have won me round with Snickers, which could be a dangerous win around, but you most definitely have. So the book that I'm going to recommend for this week actually is one that Niraj Shah talked about on the show he was on, but I've read it and it's absolutely amazing. Atomic Habits by James Clear, all about how the quantity of habit changing is better than the quality. So you've got to keep repeating these good habits to flush out the bad habits. And it talks about action and motion, and it's very interesting. The difference is very, very slight, but major into outcomes and stuff. So do grab a copy if you haven't already. And the quote for the show is by Rumi, and it is, "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form." Thank you so much for joining us both today. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. Don't forget to subscribe to get the latest episode. And if you enjoyed the chat, it would be fab if you could rate and review on Apple or Spotify. If you think the gems in the episode may inspire your family, friends, neighbour or colleague, please do share it with them. It also helps more people find the show too, which is brill. If there is anything you'd love to hear more of, less of, and importantly too, none of, please let me know. The show is here for you. So until next time, bye-bye, and remember to keep your inner sparkle sparkling.
Hope and Patience with Amelia Rope. Join the conversation at hopeandpatience.co.uk or find Amelia on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter @Hope and Pat.